أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Alhamdulillah. Welcome everyone to the next episode of Maqasid Institute's Research Forum. And our today's speaker is Professor Dr. Hussein Rassool. And the topic for today's session will be exploring research methodologies, integrating Islamic principles and contemporary scholarship. So just briefly before I introduce Prof. Rassool, just to remind, this Maqasid Institute Research Forum is meant to serve as a platform for various scholars to share their ideas on their research using the Maqasid methodology or anything that is related to their present scholarship, and that we find interesting, and it is beneficial for people to hear. And of course, Prof. Rassool is one person. I think many people, all of us, would learn a lot, inshallah. And so just very briefly, let me introduce Prof. Hussein Rassool. So he's a professor of Islamic Psychology in the Center for Islamic Studies and Civilizations at Charles Sturt University, Australia. And is a professor of Islamic Psychology and consultant at RIPA State Institute of Clinical and Professional Psychology at the Center for Islamic Psychology. He is a director of studies, Department of Islamic Psychology, also psychotherapy and counseling at Al-Balagh Academy, and chair of Al-Balagh Institute of Islamic Psychology Research. And he was previously the director of RIPA Institute of Clinical and Professional Psychology, Center for Islamic Psychology. And he also formerly worked for International Open University as the first head of the Department of Psychology. And he later became the Dean of the Faculty of Liberal Arts and Society and Sciences. So he's a fellow of the International Association of Islamic Psychology and the Royal Society of Public Health. He works as a part-time Islamic psychotherapist. Okay, let me admit a couple of people. And he is one of the leading academics in the area of Islamic psychology and psychotherapy. And he is involved in the development of the first Bachelor of Sciences in Islamic Psychology at Islamic Open University. He also developed at first university accredited certificate course in Islamic psychology, launched in Pakistan in October 2019. And a new course on advanced diploma in Islamic psychology and psychotherapy is being launched in January 2022. The first globally advanced course in Islamic psychology and psychotherapy. His research interests include psychosocial and spiritual problems in relation to mental health, psychosocial and spiritual interventions, indigenous psychology, Islamic counseling and psychotherapy, Islamic ethics in psychology. And Prof. Rassool has published over 22 books and over 120 papers and reviews in peer-reviewed journals. Welcome, Prof. Hussein Rassool. We'd be glad to hear you speak, inshallah. So just as a housekeeping matter, so I would like everyone who is able to turn off their mics. I mean, not to turn on during the speech. If possible, it would be good if you maybe to open your camera so that maybe we can also see you. And the speech, the presentation will be about between 40 and 50 minutes. And then after that, Prof. Rassool we will have a question and answer session, inshallah. So, Prof. Rassool, you may begin. Please, mic is yours now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Professor Rakimov. Thank you for this generous, welcome. Now, let's start. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه ومن استنى بسنة يوم الدين. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري وأحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to our Islamic Psychology Research Network. I think these are our second lectures and within this network. Today, the title seems to be big, but what I'm going to talk about basically is to explore, the research methodology. Mainly, if I can say a few words about this, just in the introduction, is that it's, if you're trying to explore research methodologies that integrate, say, Islamic principle, Islamic, belief with contemporary scholarships, this is the pursuit, in a way, I understand, which is guided by the Maqasid methodology, because this particular methodology, the Maqasid methodology, offers, a very comprehensive net framework. It bridges the gap between what we call traditional, Islamic teaching or traditions, but also modern academic practice. So this approach, which means the Maqasid methodology, deepen the connection between research objective and core Islamic values. In a way, what it does is to enrich the authenticity and also the relevance of research outcome within the context of Islamic belief. Let's move on to this. Why I put this? Because the lecture, is based on some of the sources of my new book. It's not coming out yet. It's inshallah, it's going to come out sometimes, I think, in September. It's from the research series, the focus series on Islamic psychology, which we're publishing about 15, 20 books. Small books, they are 50,000 words each. And so I would invite people, in the audience, if you're interested in publishing, we should be producer knowledge. So please write to me. But so it's some of the sources are there from there. Some of the sources, they are from different sources. But very quickly, this is the content of the book. I'm not going to go through it, but we cover from philosophy of the researcher to worldview and also looking at, the methodology of Maqasid, and how can you apply it, in a research proposal and so forth. I must admit, this is tentative. This is, an agenda setting. It's not the final product. I tried it, so I'm sure now in a few years' time or in a few months, I'm going to revise, about this particular proposal based on the Maqasid methodology. Now, if you don't know anything about Maqasid, you would know, because I'm going to cover some of the main framework in the next few slides anyway, well, later on, but so you would know about it. Now, again, the aim of the book, just very quickly, is to provide some sort of methodology of research and also applying, the Maqasid methodology. I'll move on because we don't want to spend time. I want to put in the context, because before we move on, into sort of contemporary research methodology and how we can apply the Maqasid methodology, we have with traditional, with modern, research paradigm. Let's look at that very briefly, the context, because of now we call it the Orientalists call it Golden Age of Islam. I tend to use the Renaissance period. Now people dispute about the period. That doesn't matter whether it is the 8th, 9th century to the 14th. Some people say 17th. Anyway, we won't go into it. But as we know, it was a period of really flourishing in scholarship, not only innovation but also there was a lot of knowledge as well anyway. And it was, like we say, that this time was remarkable in the sense that there was a lot of advancement in the field of the whole philosophy, which means, if we break it down to science, mathematics, geography, philosophy, and many others anyway. But also the important thing, there was main centers of learning, as some people would know from history, the House of Wisdom, which is the Darul Hikmah, which was based in Baghdad. And it was renowned for the center for translating, not only translating, but also preserving ancient texts from the Greek and so forth. But also the other important part was that in Kairoun, or how you spell it, this is a university, Kairoun University, established in Fez in Morocco, still exists. In fact, it was the oldest world university, even before Al-Azhar University, and it's continually operating until today. So you have all these different centers of learning and the advancements of knowledge and scholarship as well. So what happened if you look at the methodology or legacy? You find that there was integration of knowledge. What I mean by that is that knowledge was knowledge. We don't dissect it. We don't say this is the source of knowledge. All sorts of knowledge, whether it is Islamic sources or non-Islamic sources, they all come from Allah. So there's no conflict about it. But there were combination of empirical observation with physical thought, but also the synthesis of different ideas from different parts of the world, especially that what happened. Because if you look at Darul Hikmah, the people working there, they were multidisciplinary, denomination as well. What I mean by that, they were Christian, they were Jews, they were Muslim, and so forth. Anyway, but also, so you had on one side you have integration of knowledge, but on the other hand, it was the beginning of the development of the empirical approach. So in fact, they lay the foundation for what is known today as scientific method. Now, let's elaborate a bit on that. When we talk about integration of knowledge, again, this is a very important fact. You can do a certificate, integration of knowledge at the, IKI Academy. Maybe you can get information later on. And integration of knowledge in the field of psychology, well, it wasn't called psychology, but the element nafs, the psychology, the knowledge of the nafs, the knowledge of the soul, whatever you want to call it. But the ilm nafs in that field, Islamic scholars demonstrated a very profound integration of knowledge. Knowledge, like I say, was not dissected, it was connected, it was connection. It was holistic in a way. So they combined empirical observation and philosophical thought to try to understand the complexity of human behavior, of human psyche, or even human, mind as well. But they also use, they look at empirical observations, and they recognize that understanding the human psyche or the human mind, require more than just philosophical implication. Of course, they started with philosophy first, but later on they start to develop that, and they say, well, no, we need more than philosophy. We need observation, and also not only observation but also interaction. So, for example, in the study of dreams, famous scholar Al-Farabi, should say, even Ibn Qayyim al-Juzwiyya, not only focus on a philosophical way about the meaning of dreams, but also observe they observe patterns of dreams, and then potential psychological effect. So when we talk about empirical approach in psychology or nerves, we're talking here Islamic psychology or Islamic scholars emphasis on the empirical observation and experimentation, and this is extended to the realm of, as we know, psychology, which lay the foundation, the groundwork for later development in psychological methodology. Again, it's reiterating what I've said already, but just a couple of words on this is that because the Islamic scholars, they of the philosophy, they recognize that there's an importance in first-hand observation of human behavior and emotions. So through interaction with individual as well, not only observation, but interaction with individuals and communities, the scholars gain, insight into the nuance of human response in various contexts, in various settings, in various situations, but also the observational, approach was particularly evident in the study of ethics, moral behavior, ethical behavior, akhlaq, and where scholars observe how individuals, for example, navigated ethical decision or ethical dilemma, rather, and develop, virtuous behavior as well. So then you have the foundation of the scientific method in psychology. So they start using empirical approach. They start recording their observation. They start using observation. They start recording those observations and draw conclusion on evidence. These scholars paved the way. We know it today. We call it evidence-based observation. So they based the way for a more systematic, evidence-based understanding of psychological phenomena. So while the formal scientific method, as we know, was still evolving, this early effort, this early contribution by the scholars can be seen as the foundation or foundational step, towards empirically driven psychological inquiry. If you look at this particular slides, it doesn't need much explanation. It shows you the different diverse methodology of research used by, for different sort of approach. For example, the rational method used by philosophers like Vicina or Alberini, and narrative method for history, Islamic jurisprudence, Islamic law, Quranic studies, the intuitive method, more a study of mysticism and Sufism, common sense method, principle of law, and also logical interpretation. And of course, now we tend to have an integrated method, mixed method research. We combine all these methods, but within that nowadays, we need to think how we can combine all these methods with the Maqasid framework, the Maqasid methodology. Okay, so that's the whole point of the focus of this lecture as well. Right, let's move on. So as I said, this is just confirming that the empirical approach, Islamic scholars, they lay the foundation, they establish systematic way of acquiring knowledge and involving starting hypothesis testing and evidence-based evaluation, and also critical analysis of the observation. So from the process of observation, then you can start making some sort of hypothesis, and then you test them and so forth. But one important thing about, which I talk in my book, is about the philosophy of the researcher, because that's very, very important. We don't think about it, but, because our worldview, basically, I'm going to come to that, influence the way we perceive the world, the way we look at people behavior or emotion, and so forth. So it is, the worldview, basically, it's the philosophical position is based on Islamic worldview. Okay, so the worldview is indicative of a person's philosophy, basically. So the Muslim researcher, philosophical, is based on the Islamic worldview, as said in the slides anyway. And this is based on a system of values and principles. Of course, these are derived from the primary source of our knowledge, from the Quran and also from the Sunnah, and the Islamic, of course, Islamic civilization as well, according to Nursi. Nursi, yeah, okay. And so the Muslim researcher, so if you look at Ibn Haytham, we're going to look at him in a minute, his philosophy on scientific research is anchored in Islamic worldview. Not only Islamic worldview, but of epistemology and also Islamic ontology. So he identified as a main pioneer, in fact, who is responsible for exploring the scientific methodology. And as I said, it's often referred as a world first true scientist. So let's look at some of his, probably look at, what Islamic worldview is. This is from Abu Sulaiman, Abdul Hamid Ahmed Sulaiman, from IIIT, and he talked about the characteristic of it. I mean, we could talk about lots about worldview, but I just thought because of the time factor. So what he was saying there, I'm not going to read his comment, I'm just making some comment on his quotation, is that it's worth noting what he's saying as well, on the characteristics of the worldview among Muslims, because he argues that that if we talk about this statement, in fact, it underscores a distinction between an authentic Islamic worldview, which is characterized, its characteristic is practical, its characteristic is comprehensive, its characteristic is it adhere to divine laws, okay, but also positivity and also discipline. And the prevailing but purportedly Islamic worldview among Muslims anyway. Now, this worldview, this latter worldview, in fact, is criticized. Why he criticizes it? Because like I said, Muslims tend to have a worldview that is theoretical, that is atomistic, that is and many other things, passive and selective and so forth. Anyway, basically, what they do is to serve. What these characteristics tend to do is serving, in fact, to obscure and distorted interpretation of knowledge. So the way we see the world, because of these characteristics, we tend to have a distorted view of the world anyway. Moreover, it is suggested that this worldview, struggles, in fact, to adopt a thorough or objective scientific approach to research and also to analysis. So in summary, what the statement is about, it highlights the contrast between somebody who is genuine, some genuine Islamic worldview, and a prevailing worldview, for some of us, that is criticized for not embodying or not, integrating, key Islamic values and principles. It also, what it does is underscores the importance of aligning, one approach to knowledge and understanding with the core teaching of Islam, while fostering, a comprehensive and disciplined approach to research and also to analysis as well. We can miss that. He talked about Quranic worldview, but we have missed that. Let's move on to this particular part of the worldview, is what is known as the Tawahidic paradigm. In fact, Tawahidic paradigm was coined a long time ago by a professor, Dr. Kasuli, Umar Kasuli. And Tawahidic paradigm is the unicity, basically, of oneness of God. We believe in one God, monotheism. That's what it is. That everything in Islam is built upon this. Everything, it's a foundation. We don't have this, So no act of worship, as we know, rituals or inwardly or outwardly, has any meaning or value if the concept in any way compromised. I'm not going to spend too much time there, but what's important within that, there's an ethical, the akhlaq dimension of the Islamic worldview. So the Islamic fabric is not just, in a way, secular, inverted commas, but within that worldview, you have that morality, you have those core moral, ethical behavior. These fundamental, element of ethical and moral behaviors or values, act as integrating principle as they render the standards of behavior and values, into a more or less a coherent order as a unified system, as a holistic system forming the Islamic worldview. So, but also sometimes they still call it the Islamic worldview, but also you see in the literature, they call it the Quranic worldview. Now, that's important for us because as researchers, because if you look at Ibn Haytham, we said that he was the front runner, who was the father, in a way, of modern scientific, of classical scientific method, which we still used in the way. So, very quickly, it has been identified, like I said, but also responsible for exploring, for the scientific methodology, and is often referred to as, like I said, as the first true scientist. But he used, you could see, he used the Islamic worldview, the Islamic epistemology, but also Islamic ontology. Let's explore that a little bit very quickly, because it's important to understand that. So how we have to integrate the Islamic worldview, which is part of our research philosophy, in our particular research as well. Okay, he was, of course, he was nothing to do with psychology, but, like I said, knowledge was not disconnected. It was not disconnected before everything was knowledge and philosophy. But he was, he focused on optic and vision. That was it. But what's important is the experimentation and control testing as a foundation of his approach. His philosophy was integration of knowledge. Unified mathematics, physics, and physiology, which at that time most of the classical scholars did anyway. Integration of material and metaphysical. So you use a sort of material world, but also the mathematical, metaphysical, the virtual dimension into a coherent scientific approach. And his philosophy, as you say, was built in Islamic tasawwuf, epistemology, and ontology. So it involved both the material and spiritual world, which was aligned to Tawheed. So what we can conclude is that, it's that Ibn Haytham philosophy basically, embodies the integration of Islamic principle, empirical approach, which is rooted in faith, exemplified, harmony between science and spirituality. There was no science and religion were not alien to each other. There was no disconnection between those two. They were very much in harmony anyway. But what's important is he recognized the world, not only as the world, but also he laid down the groundwork for scientific knowledge through the study of optics, as we've seen before. But his work is very much rooted in Islamic principle. His philosophy on scientific research unified, all these different disciplines together as well. So we can use his particular framework as well as a basis for the different scientific methodology, but also worldview. Let's move on. I want to very briefly is looking at research ethic in some. This is part of a chapter in my book, but I'm not going to go too deep into it, but just very, very superficial in the sense of that, that's a very important component of research, and because it emphasizes, that we need to adhere to ethical principles, which is grounded, in Islam or Islamic values and also teaching. So these principles guide researchers from Islam to conduct studies that align, with the broader Islamic ethical framework while ensuring the well-being and the rights of the participant. Again, we follow there's a universal code of ethics, but also, we have the Islamic code of ethics as well. Anyway. And of course, some of these, we won't go into it, just mention it that, if you look at, Islamic psychology, we can say, some of these, if we want to conduct research, we need to align it with Islamic values and principles, and we're focusing on not only integrity and trustfulness, but some of these are what called universal ethics as well. And, honesty, transparency, in research, but upholding the truth as a cornerstone of Islamic ethics anyway, So you have justice and equity and so forth. So some of these, I'm not saying are going to in detail into it, but also important thing is cultural, recognize diverse cultural background. Even I'm Muslim, because Muslims are not, a homogenic group. We are not have the same. We're all different. We have diverse language, ethnicity, and so forth. But we are bound by what we call the Islamic cultures. But there's a difference between Muslim culture and Islamic culture. Anyway, that's another issue. But in terms, we need to be culturally sensitive. Avoid the harm we know is part of the, not maqasid of Sharia, but the qawaid of fiqhiyya. One of the maxim of law is to avoid harm and not to reciprocate harm as well. There's a hadith from Imam Nawawi as well, and beneficial responsibility, and also ethical oversight. I just want to move on because of the time factor. What I want to focus a bit more now is what's the limitation. Using, chapter 2 of just an older book, just chapter 2, where he looked at limitation of, I don't know whether I have the slides there. Yes, this is much easier for you to look at if you don't know. So, because just an older Professor Johar, he identified, these problems, this pitfall, this limitation in Islamic studies, but you can apply it. I've tried to apply it to Islamic psychology. I made an attempt to it. Okay, I'm not saying it's perfect. It's my opinion, but I may be wrong. It's purely opinion. So I've tried to apply this. How do you apply it? He did Islamic studies. I've applied to what's happening in Islamic scholarship, not necessarily research. When talking about Islamic scholarship here, I'm talking about literature and also research anyway. So we apply. I won't have time to go and explain that. So you've got to go to the websites, Maqasid Methodology, and there are a lot of papers in the journal there. You'll be able to try to find out, some of these particular, what they mean by that. But like I say, I'm going to apply it and give you some explanation to the concept as well. Right. I'm not going to go through all these. I've added a few other things as well. With Professor Oda mentioned, but talk about misrepresentation, epistemological bias. I call it blind imitation, which is a taqlid. He talked about imitation. I call about blind imitation. Partialism, literature and research, apologism as well, contradiction, and also deconstructions. As I said, I focus on some of these. I won't be able to focus on all of them. And let's look at some of these. First of all, when we talk about misrepresentation, there's a tendency within Islamic psychology. I'm going to focus on Islamic psychology now. That the tendency to heavily rely on the opinion, and interpretation of Islamic scholars rather than engaging directly with the primary source of knowledge for Islam, which is the Quran and Hadith. We tend to quote a lot of opinion because that's what they are, of scholars. Some of them, I'm not disputing, the robustness or validity of the opinion. I'm just saying that we tend to overuse it sometimes, instead of going straight into the main source. But of course, you have the practice. You have to have knowledge of Arabic. You have to knowledge of the language very well, the literature, and so forth. So that's another issue. But a significant issue within the realm of Islamic psychology involved the inadequate grasp of Islamic sources by researchers and practitioners here. So, for example, the Quran, the Sunnah, and also, the broader Islamic knowledge are often approached with very limited understanding or even misinterpretation. Because such instance can lead to all sorts of issues, to research and intentionally misusing Quranic verses, or sometimes misaligning them with their research finding. So I do some research and I find it, and I just say, oh, this verses, without understanding tafsir, where the context the verses was revealed, and so forth. And you find that, the problem is compounded, by the selective use of literal reading of the Quran. Now, one can argue about, but anyway, to support certain viewpoints, potentially in a way distorting, the true intent of what Allah said in the Quran. And also, once we read it in different language from Arabic, we are using an interpretation of, of the Quranic verses. It's not really sometimes a true interpretation of, because of the nuance, because of the the sort of elaboration of Arabic language. And so we have the problem. So because the Quran and the Arabic language and the concept, sometimes we don't delve into that rich contextual tapestry, and we tend to ignore these the profound interpretative tradition, for example, tafsir. So this omission, this reliance on purely optional scholars, sometimes, sometimes it can influence the way we think. It provides some sort of skewed understanding and also misinterpretation. One could argue about that, but we say. Another issue is partialism. Again, this is what Avda talk about when you talk about, the partialism in Islamic studies. I'm trying to, like I say, refer it to there. You have value of different perspective. Now the problem is that, if we being a purist, I think I look at psychology as benefit from integrating diverse viewpoints within the tradition, not one particular viewpoint, right? And not one particular school of thought is there. Or we can talk about madhab, but we leave it at just say school of thought or ideology. For me, Islamic psychology enriches the understanding of human behavior and well-being in the light of Islamic principle, but from diverse viewpoint within the tradition. But also holistic and comprehensive. We need to have a balance, approach, and this helps to avoid, in fact, the pitfall of sometimes fragmented knowledge, because this is where there's this is where the disconnection is. So, and also if we apply a holistic and comprehensive understanding, it encourages, the connection, of Islamic psychology, because it has multifaceted, aspects anyway. But also we need to integrate various definitions, because balancing, affiliation allows for the inclusion of insight from various Islamic school of thought anyway, because this promotes, in a way, authenticity and depth of understanding, of psychological concept within the creed, within the framework of Islamic belief and practice anyway. But also we need to be open to external contribution. We have to embrace contribution from outside Islamic tradition sometimes. That can lead to a more rounded and relevant Islamic psychology. But of course, we need to balance between exclusivity and inclusivity, because it's enhanced the applicability of psychological principle. But finally, we need to foster authentic well-being. In the sense, we have to have a balanced approach that supports development of authenticity, and so forth. But there is some problems with Islamic psychology where we tend to be partialists. We tend to only follow a particular school of thought. And, this, of course, influence not only educational curriculum, educational development, but also clinical practice as well. What else can we say? Right. I don't want to give too much away as well. But one of the other things we need to think about is apologism. And apologism within Islamic psychology is very common as well, because if you look at the literature, in a way, let me explain. It refers to the practice here of excessively or uncritically defending viewpoints from other paradigms. So what we're doing basically is saying, right, this paradigm which is outside, the framework, the Islamic paradigm, the Tawhid paradigm, we are saying, no, we defend them. We defend those things, yeah. And these often, if we want to start defending viewpoints from other paradigms, non-Islamic paradigm, then we have a problem, because then we are adopting some form of apologism. We are adopting external concepts and values. So in this context, scholars and researchers may inadvertently engage in apologism by failing to objectively address, the potential criticism, or limitation, while endorsing, particular interpretation. And one example is, you can see, you go to the website on Islamic Psychology, but this, in fact, everybody copy from each other. So one make mistake, everyone make mistake. So if you look at the example, in the sense, that's found in, when you talk about concept of nerves, the concept of nerves, is compared to Freud. Freud's psychological construct of the id. Now, this direct comparison, while possibly, I think, they may intended to enhance our understanding, but the risk is oversimplifying the complexities of both frameworks and neglecting the unique cultural, philosophical, and religious contexts, or even ideological contexts, that shape the understanding of the nafs, of the self, in the Islamic tradition. So apologism, in such cases, not only overlook the spiritual and ethical dimension inherent in Islamic literature, but also confuse readers due to their lack of contextualization. The consequences, many consequences, for example, omission of nuance, first of all, there's omission of intricate spiritual and ethical dimension, which is inherent in the concept of nafs. So by neglecting the profound depth and breadth within Islamic literature. So secondly, direct equivalence between the nafs and the ids without proper context, resulting in confusion for most of us, and also misinterpretation, especially among readers, among novices, and familiar with this concept. So the risk of distorting the understanding of the Islamic nafs, on the other hand, on Freud id. So apologism tends to cause a loss of authenticity by oversimplifying, the richness of Islamic psychology, because it reduces the concepts to a mere analogies with Western construct. To address this, it is crucial to critically evaluate the integration of this diverse paradigm, ensuring a balanced approach that preserves the authenticity of the Islamic principles while embracing the benefits of other perspectives as well. But Islam comes first. Islamic ethics, Islamic worldview, Islamic understanding, Islamic tradition come first. As just to reinforce that, you could see that the trend, there's a trend in apologism as well, anyway, because we've already seen it, that people are passionately advocating the infusion of Freudian theories and framework. I call these people the Muslim Freud, usually put a hat on them, red hat, those red hat used to work by Turkish. And so this fervent support often resembling apologism in a way, can evaluate Freud concept to something spiritual or cultural level within Islamic study. But he was a cocaine, ingested addict, although Jewish, but he was secular. Yeah. So why are we learning from Judeo-Christian tradition and try to make apology, for the, half-baked theories? Yeah. So this, in fact, there are few enthusiastic, Muslim Freuds, who are, they tend to risk offers application of integrated concept like the nafs, yeah, and the misinterpretation of the core Islamic teaching and oversight into the spiritual depth, in fact, inherent in Islamic thought anyway. So this is one of the problems. Another big issue is contradiction. Now, the concept of contradiction, they say in the slides, it become evident in academic endeavors when attempts are made, basically, to integrate knowledge from two different systems, from two different paradigms. Yeah? Or not only integrate knowledge, but sometimes we integrate clinical practice or therapeutic intervention. Yeah? Sometimes these therapeutic intervention or even knowledge, originate from divergent belief system and also worldview, because that's very important anyway. So the conflict also emerge, like I say, in the practices of self-proclaimed Islamic psychotherapies, for example, who use complementary therapies, which is inconsistent, in my opinion, and some of the evidence we have from notable scholars, that they are inconsistent with Islamic principles. Now, this highlights the clash between integrating therapies and inherent contradiction that arise with the context of Islamic traditions, which is rooted in varying belief system. So some mental health practitioners or even Islamic psychotherapists may endeavor to merge complementary therapies and sometimes the New Age practices with Islamic spiritual intervention. However, the integration of concepts like energy healing, chakras, or even meditation, even mindfulness, I'm going to look into that in a minute, Buddhist mindfulness I'm talking about here, into Islamic spiritual intervention can give rise to incongruences, but also it's totally against the creed of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. While Islamic spirituality, we all know that, is grounded in monotheism and practice derived from the Quran Sunnah, those New Age practices often stem from distinctive philosophical or even theological traditions as well. Contradiction. In recent years, we all know that there has been a notable surge, in the prominence of what they call Buddhist. Okay, that's why I use Buddhist mindfulness and mindfulness-informed intervention. A lot of Muslims adopted here. For years, I've been totally against it, but they are, of course, depend what type of mindfulness you're talking about. Oh, I would use the word contemplation. But anyway, let's look at this. So these practices classify as part of the third wave, or behavioral or cognitive strategies or therapies. They have been drawn from the Eastern spiritual tradition, mainly, sometimes some of these from Buddhism or Buddhist philosophy, and also Hindu philosophy as well. Despite their secular, that's what people say, they still bear the imprint of this origin. Now, in Islamic context, the notion of mindfulness align with the concept of muraqaba, yeah, which entail unwavering of God, oversight over one inner and outer states. It's a form of contemplation. Now, while mindless-based intervention draw from Eastern traditions, they are if you examine them, then they are not in fact congruent with Islamic belief and practice. But there is the Islamic perspective, there is that contemplation, there is the muraqaba, within certain limits are probably acceptable anyway. So as we said, the practice of this, if you navigate between the convergence of mindfulness with Islamic principle, so you have that practice, again, many Sufi practice, but even applying, if you say muraqaba or contemplation, we're talking about contemplation, these depend on so many factors. What is the underlying intent of using it? Is it aligned with Islamic values? And then, you need to question this, because challenges emerge, when in cases where people use esoteric mindfulness method or Buddhist-inspired, mindfulness. Okay, we just do the exercise. We don't think of theology. That's our excuse. That's apologism. I know my own family, they did yoga, They say, no, we just do exercise. But they say, ideology behind it. There's a mantra, have you heard of subliminal perception? We do the exercise, but we have the mantra going in our head, in our consciousness. Subliminal perception, we see things and we don't even know it's been going through our nervous system. Anyway, so what we're talking about is that the importance, the importance. So for me, in some Buddhist inspired mindfulness, then there are some problems, and Allah said, in Surah Baqarah, Surah 152, interpretation meaning, remember me, I remember. So why do we have to borrow from other, ideology, as if Islam was never complete? Of course, today I perfected the religion, as Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said. Now, the other point in terms of, apart from this, we look at deconstruction in Islamic psychology. Now, so it's a word, it's a philosophical thing. It's a framework. It's part of the deconstruction. It's part of modern philosophy, and it's like it has in fact had an impact in some quarters, very minute, on Islamic psychology, because it comes from postmodern movement, and in Arabic is referred to as tafluq, I think. Am I analytic? Am I right? Yeah, or something like that. It doesn't matter. Basically, it involves some form of analytical, spiritual approach. Analytical approach beyond demolitions, not demolition, but aim to uncover some sort of meaning and within text, often diverging from sort of what the author, what the interpretation, the original interpretation is about anyway. But in the context of Islamic psychology, where tradition and interpretation carry weight, deconstructionism serve as a tool to challenge, the viewpoint, the existing viewpoint, the traditional viewpoint, as if to reveal some new assumption, some new idea, some new, justice, or even some new, from a feminist, there's an agenda with this anyway, but I'm going to talk about it in a minute. And so in a way, that is creeping into Islamic psychology. Why it is creeping in Islamic psychology? Because nowadays, we don't only have Islamic psychology, we're still evolving. We have Islamic liberation psychology. If you have not heard of it, you hear it now, And so it's, I think I've already mentioned some of these, that the role, this framework, trying to explore hidden meaning, and they try to deconstruct knowledge and try to write it from a different narrative. In these cases, it could be a feminist narrative, it could be an oppressed narrative, or, and so forth, or Judeo-Christian narrative, and so forth. And let's move on. But let's focus on that liberation, psychology. The core principle is that was in the literature. There are not many of them, but they, their psychology centers are grounded, the course, they say that's what they argue. The person, there's a few of them anyway. The core values, of just talk about justice, talk about equity, which they actively integrate in the psychological process anyway. Now, the approach seeks to challenge oppressive structures and empower individual representation. Yeah, of course, we all want to do that. We all want to, oppress the poor, the destitute, especially in South America, where that comes from anyway, and so forth. And also they try to apply Islamic values to it, as if, it's dressed with Islamic. Doesn't mean that they're Islamic. Yeah, there are a lot of literature like that in research scholarship as well. They dress the Islamic, it's nothing to do Islamic. Yeah. So that's about the basics. So basically, through that commitment, they want to dismantle oppressive regime or system, while they want to say, the whole human dignity, human rights, and so forth. But liberation psychology, as if they align with ethical and social teaching of Islam. But this is total opposite. What their agenda here, the hidden agenda, are bad as well, anyway. But of course, we are totally against that. The creed of Ahlus Jama, are totally, we have a profound emphasis, on established teaching of the Quran and Hadith, and elevating authoritative interpretation of premises of guidance as well. However, sometimes they're concerned about interpretation. Sometimes, the apprehension lies in the risk of straying from the traditional teaching, established social norms. Because if you start reinterpreting the Quran, even you're not an exegesis, you're not a person authority in tafsir and so forth. People do that. People interpret the Quran from a feminist point of view and start, reinterpret the Quran in the light of feminism, in the light of LGBT, and in the light of many other groups, minority groups. And so then this tend to distort everything also, But also what they are challenging is the dynamics, in the interpretation anyway. Okay, it was written by male, the translation of male, the tafsir of male, we want a different narrative and so forth anyway. But they have this concern, they have an effect, on faith and norm as well anyway, And so there's no... they are challenging, in fact, the fabric of Islamic tradition and evolving perspective that cannot coexist with Islam, although they claim they can, But I have written a paper on this because these people have a different agenda, And their agenda for me is to promote feminism, is to promote equal rights for LGBT+, for promoting that, that a woman can be an imam for mixed genders. They can do khutbah and so forth. These people anyway. And so this is their agenda. And also this particular ideology, they come from South America. So tomorrow, are we going to have an Islamic Marxist psychology? Are we going to have a, Islamic, communist psychology, socialist psychology? What's going on? And I wrote a paper about it and criticized, and debate about how can you apply this particular psychology when, especially in Muslim majority, where we are different social context. You can't, anyway, even if you try to apply it, you cannot anyway, and because of our different contexts and so forth. Anyway, and also, as I say, this particular ideology is based on Jesuit, mostly from Latin America, Christian-based theology. Again, we are looking at other. We are trying to integrate, Christian theology, or Marxist theology, Christian Marxist theology into psychology as well. There's a big danger. We have to be very, very careful about this anyway, I think I already said that how we with time? Is that, are we okay? Yeah.
5 minutes more, please.
Okay, I'll try to finish the next. I'll put 10 slides more. So the critic, I was saying that, primary-based adoption, resistance because it contradicts the creed of Ahl-Sunnah and also is counter to Sharia, Quranic teaching, and also the Sunnah. And they also want to, the humanistic principle, they want to really, look at the changing the interpretation, the tafsir of the Quran from a sort of feminist point of view as well. We want, Now, key element, this comes to the last part of it, the key element of the sort of Maqasid mythology, in fact, and some of you are familiar with it, and some of you, first of all, pre-iteration of the researcher. Like I said before, we need to have, a philosophy, which is our Islamic worldview based on Tawheed and so forth. There's the different step in the Maqasid methodology, purpose, framework, and psychology. You're going to see the diagram in a minute. And also we can use, the Maqasid of Sharia as well. But is it? Yeah. I'm not going to. All right. So for some of you who are not familiar with it, this is the framework. This is the framework. You can see you have a purpose, you have your Quran, Sunnah, where you do a cycle of reflection, which we need a lot of contemplation about, and then the framework also is elaborated. I'm going to show you in a minute. And then you go to critical study, literature, formative theories, and so forth. This is an ongoing process, a continuous process. This is the framework, and when you're applying for your research, when you're doing your research proposal, this is the framework. But also when you look at, you sort of break down the framework, this is what the framework came. Yeah, the framework is related to concept, to objective, to values, commands, all this from the Quran. Okay, so and so forth. And I'm going to show you in a minute because of the time factor and applying it. I did that, but it's probably very early. Right. I mean, it's just my writing. Just an example. Anyway, I tried. Again, this need to be developed because I need 1.5 time. I'm going to develop it, looking at applying this to a particular piece of research I was going to do. Okay, that was a very rough, and so of course I need to look at it and then refine it, and like most research you do anyway. So this is an example I did about last year anyway. I have tried to apply this, this methodology in research. The research was breakthrough role, legitimacy, adequacy, and role support of university in knowledge integration of Islamic studies and ethics in the psychological curriculum. And this was part of the advanced course in Maqasid methodology, from the institute. Anyway, this is the lecture. But the purpose of research, again, when I use the Maqasid methodology, one of them is purpose of research. Okay, yeah. So the preservation of faith, it was part of it because that's part of, that's the knowledge integration, of course, and holistic concept of worship. Because if you read, about the purpose of research, the first thing we do, is for worshiping Allah. That's the first reason for the research anyway. And then you have several, sub-objectives as well. And let me move on. And the study focus, again, we know about it already because looking at the role of moral values, the legislative role, the adequacy of role, and also role support anyway as well anyway. And then I'd map the framework, using the framework. Remember, we had the framework there, the concept, the objective, the values, the command, the universal laws and group, and so forth. And I tried to do that. Again, like I said, this is not a tablet of stone. Maybe in a few months, I'm going to look at it again and say, right, I need to change this, I need to change that, I need to refine this, and so forth. But I use that based on my cycle of reflection from the Quran and Sunnah. Okay, yeah, and many Qurans, not Sunnah. And so but here I use Quran, Sunnah as well, because I use Anawi Hadith about, the Qawaid al-Fiqhiyya, the Hadith on harm. So you can see universal law, the fitra, and so forth, and different bits and pieces. So again, trying to apply this particular methodology. I mean, you have to understand the methodology first to be able to apply it, but this is just, like I said, and primary work. So to conclude, because you're going to have the slides anyway, you can read to your leisure. But to talk about, sorry, miss an O in there. It's a very strong framework. It's a robust framework, because what it does is it's synthesizing Islamic principle with psychological research. Yeah, but at the same time, it maintains that high objective. Yeah. And also, preservation of faith, preservation of intellect, while integrating ethic and psychology knowledge as well. It provide, journey. First of all, we need to have the intentions be right, because I'm going to come to that last minute. It deepen the connection between the objective and the core teaching of Islam, provide authenticity, and also it empower researchers like you and me to contribute meaningfully to both psychology, but also as Islamic study. But above all, you need to have what's your intention of doing the research. Your intention, your niyat is very, very important anyway. As Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, action not judged by the intention, and a person will be rewarded in the first of An-Nawawi hadith as well. I shall stop there and let's have some questions.
Thank you very much, Professor. So if you could stop sharing.
Yeah, okay. Stop sharing, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, is it gone? Stop share, okay, right.
Okay.
Right.
Yes,
okay.
It's gone. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
Oh, wow,
Thank you.
how many people we have now? 20 people?
It's 33, altogether 33
Okay.
participants. So,
32. Oh, wow. Sorry, I'm just going to have a quick drink.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Prof. Rassool, of course, for the interesting presentation, and the ideas on research methodology and the importance with especially with regards to ethics and with regards to what kind of methodology do we use, and also not to fall into some problems and limitations that you mentioned. So the idea of research methodology and what exactly do we do and how do we apply, let's say, the Maqasidi approach to research is something that we would like to invite people to explore more through our course, Maqasid methodology course at Maqasid Institute. And you're welcome to apply. In fact, we are going to have our the next course will be starting in September, from 1st September. So we still have time to apply. And so these are very very important points, especially when we want to talk about research and education and action. We want to see them as related to connectivity and holism, and the holistic interpretation, and looking at Islam or Islamic scholarship in a broader sense, not something that is only limited to the traditional Islamic subjects like ulum al-Quran, ulum al-Hadith, usul al-fiqh, and usul al-fiqh, and so on. But also at a broader context of even including the area of psychology and other social sciences and other humanities and other sciences as well. So this is very important to look at different methodologies and how to integrate maybe a better how to use this ideas of integration of knowledge and maqasid methodology to produce knowledge, basically, and base our understanding and our ideas and our production of knowledge based on the primary sources of Islam, the Quran and the Sunnah, and not to fall into those problems that Prof. Rassool have mentioned, like different areas, different streams of psychology now. Anyway, so let us have a question and answer session, and if anyone wants to just ask questions here directly, you may raise your hand, and you can ask. Or if you want to, yes, Waqar, Brother Waqar, please.
Yeah, I have just a quick question about, first of all, thank you, Professor, for a very good and insightful lecture on Islamic methodology related to research. I have just a quick question on the cultural sensitivity aspect of what you discussed, especially the research ethics in Islam. In cultural sensitivity, you explain Muslim cultures and Islamic cultures, but we also have very dynamic local cultures as well. So do we have any kind of specific guidance about taking into account the local cultures? For example, I'm from Pakistan, and in Pakistan we have too many cultures, Punjabi.
Which part of Pakistan? Because that whether you come from Punjab or Sindh, big difference. Is it?
Yeah, I'm from
in the context of the culture.
I'm from Swat, Pakistan.
Swat Valley, I've been there.
Yeah. Everyone who have been to Pakistan necessarily has
it's different. It's different. Yeah, like I say, I mean, you have to take the context of what we call indigenous psychology itself, the culture into account. But then this indigenous culture, it cannot contravene the Islamic belief and practice. You can say whatever it is, because of course you are flexible, you're sensitive to the needs of the people, to the culture, to their food, to their language, whatever it is. But it depends. No, if you're working as a psychotherapist, that's what the whole point is. It's not Islamic psychology is a theory of it, but we apply it, with patient. If you're working with clients, what I mean by culture is that you be aware that some Muslims don't have strong iman. They don't. We don't expect everybody that come to you, would have a high level of iman. Some of them may not be Muslim because they have a problem and so forth. And so you have to understand that, but also you have to not to try to push your dawah, inverted commas, on them straight away. This is danger. I don't do that. First of all, you assess the patient and so forth. You understand the culture and so forth. But later on, once you establish a relationship, and if they feel that the Quran and the Sunnah is meaningful to them, for the purpose of living, then you can apply that. But sometimes you might get non-Muslim patient. What do? Do you see what I mean? So in a way, you can't. There's a lot of controversies about it, but what I'm saying, cultural sensitivity, yes, you need to take this into consideration. But when you come to Islam, no, you can't change the rule because of culture. It's a universal, global, applied to Muslim and non-Muslim. Islam. I'm sure you agree with me anyway. So, Malakun, that's where I was. Malakun. In Swat Valley, I was there last year.
It's 20 kilometers from my home.
So, and do you see what I mean? I think, listen, what I tried to present there is not something tablet of stone, as I say. There's not a rigid thing. It's just like my views, my opinion, my observation. Now, I may change my mind, in a few months, in a few years, and so forth, but it's an agenda setting. It's for you, all of you, coming to Islamic psychology, challenging, our Judeo-Christian psychology, challenging those Muslim Freudian, and establish, a psychology that meet the needs of the Ummah. That's our point, Why do we do research? It's not theoretical. It's something that we can apply to the Ummah, which is going to be beneficial to the Ummah. That's why our attention should be okay. That's why I put the attention last in that, because it's what the intention of our research we're trying to do. Is it purely theoretical? Most of the classical scholars, they were not just theoreticians, they were the clinical, what they developed, they applied in their clinical practice. All these physicians, during the Renaissance period, they all apply. So it's not just a theory, it's an application of it to the Ummah as a whole. Sorry, taking your time for. What do you think, anyway, about the cultural sensitivity? I can't hear you very well. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. I want yes, I definitely get your point that cultural sensitivity can be taken into account, but the boundaries come where your Islam permits you.
Can you speak a bit louder? I can't hear you very well. Maybe it's because of the distance we are anyway, but I'm very far from you.
I don't know.
Please, sorry.
Yeah. I definitely got your point that we can take local cultural sensitivities into account unless and until it is not contradictory with the guidance of Quran and Sunnah. Yeah. So like Quran and Sunnah will prevail, and after that, cultural sensitivity.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Professor, there is a question in the chat, Asha, Ashika, Nazir. What are the fields of Islamic psychology can we focus on for research?
Wow, the world. There's everything we need to learn about Islamic psychology. There's, I think, you could look at, you could, if I use the word social psychology, environmental psychology, physiological psychology, depending on what branch of psychology you're in. But like I said, you look at psychotherapy itself, Islamic psychotherapy, you could look at some effectiveness, evaluation of certain Islamic-based cognitive psychology. So there's lots of things. So please, if you're really interested, contact me. I'll put my email there. Then we can discuss it about it. But it's such about everything you could think of. The important thing is how you're going to measure it. It's not about ideas. It's about methodology. How are you going to apply the methodology? That's the important thing. So I know I'm being vague about it. I can't be specific because you can look at so many of the concepts that we use. I know somebody interested in ihsan, the practice of perfection. Today I heard a khutbah in Jummah, about Surah Nisa, the 5 verses of the Quran that talk about hope. So I'm going to go and read about it and really explore those 5 verses of the Quran. I just did a paper on the effect, a meta-analysis on the effect of Quran recitation on a mental health outcome. This was a meta-analysis. Of course, you could, there's a lot of these meta-analyses tend to provide more question and answers. And normally what we do is to look at research that's been done, because most researchers pose more questions, beg more questions than answers, and you follow them up. When they call about limitation of particular research in psychology, then you take it from there, and try to improve the methodology as well. But then if you're going to use the Maqasid methodology, that's great. But please, you can contact me. I don't know who it is. It's a person anyway. I put my address, my email address there somewhere.
So any other questions? So you can just speak up or write in the chat.
I'm looking at my Maqasid. What's my Maqasid? Just any questions? Yeah, as you know, maybe some of you are new to this particular framework, and this is part of the Islamic Psychology Research Network, which is a Maqasid Institute sort of collaboration with ISIP, the International Student, Association Islamic Psychology. Okay, so we're just starting the sort of the hierarchy, the structure of it. So inshallah, later on, especially those who have done the course, and we're going to look at the criteria. If you're interested in psychology, and the network will probably be able to invite you to join us. And also we're going to have these regular lecture by different people from both Maqasid Institute and also from Islamic Psychology as well.
Can I have a question, Dr. Ildus?
Yes, go ahead.
I have a question.
Yes, Brother Sanjar. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you.
Good to hear from you, Brother Sanjar. I remember last year we were in Istanbul at that time, I think.
Yes. Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum. It was a very informative lecture for me. As you know, I am a student of political science. I'm very interested in the application of Islamic methodology to politics, especially contemporary politics. And I read some books regarding the psychological analytics. You know this? This is another concept. To politics, it's very interesting. When you read the Quran, you can find some parallels to this Freud's philosophy. Here, I have another question. It's not question. I think it's like comment to yours.
Please do. Please.
Yeah, when we are talking about creating or forming Islamic methodology, but we have a problem with the concepts, Islamic concepts. When we talk about psychology or the political science or the science, we have to deal with the concepts which is produced, created by non-Muslims and non-Islamic culture, the scientific methodologies out of Islam, I mean. But the problem is that whether we create our approach Islamic or not, we have to deal with this concept. Unless we cannot Islamic psychology, because the psychology is not shaped by Westerners, as a discipline. It's not Islamic, I think. What about the political science? We have the same thing. We can say the same thing. So what do you think about these things? But we may create Islamic methodology approach, but we have to still deal with the concepts is in Islamic. Thank you very much.
Yes, I mean, when you do the course on knowledge integration and Islamic thought from the IKI Academy, I mean, I learned from there that there's no conflict, between using concepts. It's not form of apologism or anything like that. It's just that they are. Knowledge is whether they are they come from Allah, whether they are we call it secular and Islamic. Some people, in fact, don't like to use the word Islamic and non-Islamic knowledge. Anyway, knowledge is knowledge. Yeah. But, so we are going to bound to use to come across concept that's been, construed, defined, examined in the context of white Anglo-Saxon, students. Yeah, that's what most research is about, from white Anglo-Saxon middle-class student from America. Most 80% of research from there in psychology, more than that probably anyway. Now, we're going to bound to concept, but the thing is, if you're going to use that, for me, the way I understand it, if you're going to use that, I'm going to look at that concept from Arabic, from the Quran, So I'm going to try to examine the concept, but of course, if I don't I know Arabic, then, okay, but you still can look at translation, you could look at the meaning of it, because even the meaning of naf, the meaning of self, you can look at it from different perspective, So many different perspectives, not purely theological, not purely Quranic viewpoint, because the word self, we use the word self. And so in a way, you're going to, the word self is the word self is from, sort of Western, concept, but we have the word nafs. Okay, some people say nafs is soul, but we tend to say the nafs is the self and the ruh is the soul. That's established, in fact, within Islamic psychology. So we are going to use concept, but it doesn't mean that we have to reject everything that's in the West as well. As long as they don't contradict, the creed of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, then there's no problem. That's how I see it. It's my opinion, and I'm sure people would share that views anyway with me, that you're going to we don't live in a world that we're going not everything is westernized, and yes, but we still can carry on, within that paradigm. We can still work within, but we have to, again, I think, going back, like I said in my example, that in Quran, Surah Nisa, there's 5 verses talk about hope. So I might want to explore hope, hope in psychotherapy, hope, as a spiritual intervention, in different ways. But first of all, I need to understand, the verse of the Quran, from again, opinion of scholars, the tafsir and the hadith and everything else anyway. So we're not going to be totally isolated from Western concept. We have to live with it. And we live with it. There's no problem, the harmony anyway between these. So for me, just accepting, but at the same time, you can pursue your research, from depending on methodology you use anyway.
We had a question. I think Sister Nahid Azhari had her hand up. If you could ask a question. Nahid Azhari.
Assalamu alaikum.
You wanted to ask something?
Alaikum salam. Thank you, Professor and brother. What's the name? I don't know.
You're from Malaysia?
Yes, I'm from Malaysia.
Okay.
Thank you for noticing.
Yes,
currently, I'm a PhD candidate in Islamic, studying Islamic thought and civilization. But then my question is not about with the Islamic, psychology course or Islamic thought in that sense. I'm asking if we were to come up with a module by using this Islamic psychology or Islamic value, but we want to address as well the non-Muslim. So is it on the ethical and maqasid basis, what do you say if we do not name it as Islamic, but we inculcate the principle within the module or the framework? What's your comment on this?
I would pass on the message to Dr. Fikov anyway. He'll probably be able to answer that question better than me. But I'll make some comments as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor.
Sister Nahida. Well, I would answer this question that yes, of course, we can structure any educational modules by using maybe the language which is which can be understood by non-Muslims as well. But of course, during in that course, in that module or course, we'll have to talk about concepts as they are, let's say, as they're given in the Quran and the Sunnah, and that is why we talk about correcting the concepts, and which is very important because we all have our own understanding of what is, let's say, what things mean, what ideas mean, what are those concepts that relate to certain things, events, phenomena. And we can name them in, let's say, in English, in Bahsam Layu, or in others. And we can have a discussion and a common understanding. But sometimes we do need to correct those concepts, like the concept of gender, for example, or the concept of religion or the deen. Some of these concepts they have been changed to suit some ideologies, and so we want to. What we do is we want to correct those concepts. And why do we do this? In order to realize the objectives that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us in the revelation. All right, there's a genuine worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also to know Him, to understand Him, and to also invite others to on that path, on the path of understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and worship of Him. So what is important is that yes, we can have a common language. All right, and whether it is any other non-Arabic language, but then we use certain concepts and certain values, certain concepts which are based on some values which may be different from Islam, or maybe based on some ideology that is contradictory to Islam, and so we have to align with those correct concepts that we can derive from the Quran and the Sunnah. And of course, we do have some the methodology for it, and I would really invite you to explore the Maqasid methodology with us, and see how you can actually learn, and how you can apply these ideas, because there are limitations to our understanding and so on.
Yeah, I like to add something there as well, and is that
yes, please go ahead, and then
thank you.
Yeah,
right.
I think just to complement what Dr. Akiko mentioned, is that we are I don't know whether you're a psychologist or not, but we are developing, inshallah, a course. The course of Maqasid methodology will be the same. The core element we are going to apply to Islamic psychology. So in a way that the core of the course will be the same, but there are some areas where there may be live session and things like that, where it'd be something like application. How do we apply to Islamic psychology? So we are trying to make the link anyway. So that would be suitable for psychologists or students of Islamic psychology and so forth, because then it's directly, you're going to discuss about, for example, like we say, okay, we're going to write a psychological research based on how we're going to do it, what are the issues and so forth. So that's what the course is going to try to train you anyway. So of course it's not going to be non-Muslim, for Muslim only, but the problem is also what we talk about is worldview. If you have different worldview, you're going to have conflict, and it's sort of the person who can say that, although in the knowledge integration, when we did it, there was some non-Muslim there. They were well accommodated. But again, there was not too many. There was a lot of concept, but not necessarily as a Maqasid methodology would be anyway. But so there's we had people who are from Christian theology who was doing the course, and who really wanted to study how do you do integrate knowledge. So I mean, I think for me to really understand, it's the same component really of a big package really. You need to know about knowledge integration as much as the methodology as well.
All right, thank you.
Right, so
and we are also trying to come up with the same course, but specifically for the economics and finance group. Dr. Fadlullah Wilmot, please, if you could.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, very well.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, alhamdulillah. No, I would just like to, 1 second, I need to get, okay. I would just like to ask about this concept of Islamization of psychology, because I translated Dr. Badri's Lizard Hole book into Malay many years ago.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, so it is in Malay. Now it's been reprinted. But I knew Dr. Malik, but he wrote a follow-up paper because some of his friends asked him about out of the lizard hole, but then he needed to speak how to get out of the lizard's hole. So I just wonder, do you have any sort of additional ideas about his paper on why, what, how, and who? Do you have any ideas about any additional thoughts that Dr. Malik Badri put in his paper in Islamic Psychology, the Journal of Islamic Psychology? Those 4 questions, why, and why I think it's clear, but how and who?
Yeah,
Hello?
I think. Oh yeah, I'm going to try. I'm just writing it so.
Okay, fine.
Right. Yeah, you could say, why people do that. Yeah, I mean, okay, that's it's still not explored that much anyway. For nobody has done a piece of evidence. There's no evidence, or research evidence and such. But what Malik Badri said, and we appreciate his contribution. He was the father of modern Islamic psychology. Anyway, I had the opportunity to spend some time with him. Alhamdulillah. Anyway, may Allah bless him. Anyway, and so when we talk about how, when we talk about the question of how we do it, and the issue is about knowledge integration. Now, we used to call a bit Islamization of knowledge. Yeah, and there are some good things about it. There's some benefit and so on. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But what terminology you use. But if you use integration of knowledge, you have to study that and you understand. But to do that, you need to, it's to do with education. Now, at the moment, what we're doing, if I use the analogy of the river, and that, we have what they call upstream, downstream analogy. At the moment, what we are doing is that people are going through the system of secular psychology and end up, and then they need to top up, their knowledge of Islamic psychology, right? So which means people are drowning and we're trying to rescue them, by providing Islamic psychology. Now, what about the upstream? Why not teaching these people how to swim so that some of them will still drown, yes, but at least most of them would be okay. So what my views is we need to look at undergraduate course. We need to tackle the problem of, how in 2 ways, looking at undergraduate course and also postgraduate courses. Now, undergraduate course, I've been working in Pakistan the last 3-4 years, it takes a long time, is to look at undergraduate course in psychology and try to integrate knowledge of Islamic studies within the curriculum. Now, what is ironic, although Pakistan is an Islamic country, as Dr. Walker would tell me, but the institution anyway, the constitution, I mean, but if you give a degree of Islamic psychology to somebody, they won't get a job. Nobody would give them a job. but we're not calling Islamic psychology. We're calling it psychology, but we are different. So in the end, in 5 years, 10 years, these graduates, would have integrated knowledge. So we need to tackle the upstream problem. At the same time, we're going to have that flow, especially in Western countries, which is worse. In Muslim countries, worse anyway, compared to other countries. So we need to tackle both sides. This is, and I think people are interested, but this integration of knowledge is not about psychology. It's about all the different disciplines we have. So,
but don't we need to start
sciences,
from
all the social science? We already done it with economic, finance. It's been done, in terms of theory and practice. Sorry.
No, but don't we have to start with concepts? Don't we need to start with dealing with concepts? Don't you think?
Yes. So what you're saying then? Which concept we have to deal with?
Don't we have to draw our concepts about is psychology and man from the Quran and apply them? We don't have to call it Islamic psychology, but
no.
But Islamic concepts in the Quran are universal concepts. They depict the real nature of humanity and man. So don't we need to start with those concepts?
But we do. But we do
okay.
in some courses. In some courses, that's university accredited. We do. We talk about the fitra.
Okay. All right.
So these are being done. The literature on the concepts, based on Quran and Sunnah, from a sort of ilm nafs, the psychology of the self, the literature has increased so much, the last 10 years, so there's lots of literature now. There are a lot of books that have been translated from Arabic to English, on psychology, Okay, they didn't call it psychology. So a lot of this concept, like one of the books that's coming out, inshallah, soon, is about the model of care, what they call the Maristan model of psychiatric care. Nobody has written anything on that. There's no literature on it. But we are looking at it, what the model of care before the autonomous empire and so forth, what they call the Bimaristan or Maristan, what was the model of care there was? It was, when you look at it, and there were a lot of material which had to be translated maybe from Turkish and so forth. A lot of people did a lot of research in Istanbul, in the Topkapi Museum and so forth. So there are a lot of things being translated from Arabic to English. So people are more accessible, than during my time, when I was studying undergrad in psychology. So yes, there's things happening. I think, but we're still very early on.
Okay, so just one question here from Wahida Mubashir, and I think we can wrap up if there is no other. So can we apply this Maqasid approach in rehabilitation sciences like speech therapy?
Well, you can apply to it, but again, it's not an intervention. It's a research framework. So if you're going to study, the effect of certain methodology in speech therapy or whatever it is, the efficacy of it, you can apply that Maqasid methodology. Yeah, you can. So it depends. Yeah. But like I say, it's a scholarship. It's to do with research. Yeah. Or inquiries rather than a particular intervention as such. It's a research intervention, but not therapeutic intervention.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. If maybe if there is one last question from the audience, if is there anyone to ask one last question?
Maybe I should ask one really, because what I want to know is what the needs of people. Yeah, what do you really want us to look at? You know, and to contribute to your understanding of Islamic psychology. You know, because we're talking about Islamic psychology. There are a lot of research that look at finance for different groups, and we are psychology groups, so we focus on psychology. So what would like to hear from you, maybe even not now, but even you can write to us and tell us, you know, what do you, you know, what's your needs? You know, I sometimes think I know, maybe we don't know, you know, what would you need us to contribute for that you have an understanding. In fact, we can base our future, you know, presentation on some of your feedback as well, inshallah. So, is that you understand what I'm trying to say? Anybody, please do.
Okay, all right. So, what I'm going to do is, I think we should end this session now.
Okay.
And Alhamdulillah, thank you very much, Prof. Rassool, for your kind and good presentation. MashaAllah, as always. And if you, of the audience, if you have any questions or any comments, or you want to connect with Prof. Rassool, or you want to connect with Maqasid Institute or with me, I'm a Director of Research and Deputy Executive Director at Maqasid Institute. I'm going to write my email here, and you can write to me. And then I think I also have written Prof. Rassool's email there, so you can find it there. So and the website, I've already mentioned the website. It is maqasid.org, which is maqasid.org. And so please log in, check out. We have our Facebook page, and we have our YouTube channel. So please interact with us, connect with us, and we'll be more than happy to talk to you, to you know, invite you to our research forums like this in future, and so on, and connect with you, inshallah. So here is my email. Just
right, while you're typing it, I just want to mention that this particular PowerPoint presentation, you're going to have a PDF, okay? I don't know, maybe we'd have some places where you have access to it. I definitely think it would be a YouTube, but you can have, I'm going to send it as a PDF. It's easier to send rather than PowerPoint. It was the same thing. So you're going to get a copy of this, inshallah.
All right, so I'm gonna get this PDF from Prof. Rassool, and you know, if you can get it either directly from him, or maybe you can write to me as well.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's it for today. Thank you very much, and we really thank everyone who joined the discussion today. Alhamdulillah, and it was really good to have you, Prof. Rassool. And we wish everyone a good day, good whatever the time of the day it is for you. And wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum, everybody.